two subjects. I just had a brief but very constructive meeting with Senator Koch and Speaker Zellers. My understanding from that discussion is that they, on behalf of the Republican caucuses, will be presenting something tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, and that will provide basis for moving ahead, hopefully beginning Friday, to get into more detailed discussion about the remaining differences on the budget. And we all reaffirmed our desire to have that resolved in 2 weeks just to avoid the shutdown. And the urgency of doing so was certainly underscored for me by the process of the last few days of looking at what would continue and what would shut down if our recommendation to the district court is adopted. And I just want to stress again, my recommendations are not based on personal preferences or policy priorities, but rather on a reading of the Minnesota Constitution and a very clear prohibition against spending any money without specific legislative authorization, which has not occurred except for the Department of Agriculture and a few of the continuing appropriations. So we applied a principle that sort of overrode that said, we have to provide for the public safety and protection of the life of people for whom we're responsible. And it was really on that basis primarily that we made the exceptions that we did. Now, some may challenge that as well as part of the process, but again, I felt very much constrained by and directed by the clear wording of the Minnesota Constitution. Be glad to respond to questions.
What is your understanding will happen in the meeting tomorrow? Our understanding was you bring a spreadsheet and kind of explain what you've already seen in this sense. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, what I said was we'd like to have tomorrow afternoon to see what their new proposal is, and assess that and do our own preparations. So, I just got the letter a short while ago, and so until I can discuss that with respective commissioners and others, I mean, I don't have a specific detailed response to that right now, except that I hope we can begin on Friday and devote the next 2 weeks to resolving this.
Governor, there won't be any new revenue in their offer from what it sounds like. I assume that's what they told you. So what would have been constructive about the meeting?
They didn't tell me that there would be no new revenue, and we'll start from where we are. But we have 2 weeks now, and the time is growing short, so we really need to just sit down and thrash this out and produce a mutually acceptable result in 2 weeks.
You come to the table with more revenue, otherwise you're not going anywhere. It sounds like from what you said before.
That's what I've said consistently, yes, and nothing's changed with that. So, I for the sake of making hopefully some progress, I abandoned my request that they give a specific target number that they're willing to agree to, and acceded to their desire to move into each area of spending and try to establish our differences there and show on our side the justification, the need for that additional spending. So, I agreed to their approach, and we're going to give it a try because we just have to keep working at this till we resolve it.
You said in a press release this morning that you are doing this with a heavy heart, but you're moving forward with this, and Republicans say you don't need to, that you're very, very close. Why are you doing this? And why?
We're not very close. We're $1.8 billion apart. We were $3.6 billion apart. They're $34 billion, and my $37.6 billion are our last two budget proposals. And that's a $3.6 billion difference, and I came halfway, $1.8 billion, and they have not budged from $34 billion. I mean, $1.8 billion is not my definition of close.
Well, when you say heavy heart, that belies the thousands of Minnesotans who are going to be really hurt by a shutdown.
Absolutely. There's no way around that. That's why I intend to do everything I possibly can over the next 2 weeks. That's why I've been doing everything up until now that I could think of. I've proposed mediation to the leadership, and that was rejected. I propose now that the court order us to have a mediator to facilitate that process. I've made an offer, a reasonable, balanced, fair offer, a combination of, my budget now from the original revenue spending forecast of both last November and February is about $39 billion, so I've reduced that by $2.4 billion, a cut in spending, and then a proposed $1.8 billion increase in revenue. So, I've already gone a long ways to try to resolve this, but they got to meet me halfway.
Does your new approach, this bill-by-bill approach, does this hold forth the possibility that you will let some bills, a partial budget, be signed into law before the entire total budget is established?
No, I've said I'm not going to agree to anything until I agree to everything. And we need to get a complete resolution before and a prior agreement on what will be discussed in the special session before I would be willing to call one.
Governor, what's it like being the leader of a state that most consider to be on the forefront of all state government shutdowns in the country?
I wouldn't choose it.
Sir, regarding your response to the idea that the Constitution constrained you or limited you in terms of the list of essential services, how difficult a process was it trying to measure everything against the Constitution?
Well, Article 11 says, no, I don't remember the exact words, Mr. Lillehog would, but no funds can be expended that have not been appropriated by the legislature. So the funds were not appropriated in those 8 bills, and therefore all those areas of activity, one could argue, cannot be funded as of July 1st if we don't reach an agreement. I mean, the strictest reading of that would be, the prison everything shuts down. Absolutely everything shuts down. Again, I think I can't believe that was the intent of the framers of the Minnesota Constitution, and there's certain, overriding public interest in being protected and being safe and not causing any catastrophic economic effects, although there will be serious economic effects, but not one of total catastrophe. So, we had to apply a standard that was admittedly somewhat nebulous, just as best we could. But again, I felt very much directed by the Constitution that this is not about which programs I think are very important or essential, because I think almost all of them are in state government, and they've all been passed by previous legislators and governors to serve the people of Minnesota. So I would look at all of them as essential. But in this instance, that wasn't the consideration. It was really the direction of the Constitution.
The Constitution also says that the government exists to protect the health and safety of its citizens, and you're recommending that healthcare providers don't get paid in a shutdown. How does that protect the health and safety of those citizens?
Well, I believe that we don't first of all have the authority to be paying. We don't have the funds appropriated to be paying, and I believe that providers hopefully will be able to absorb this for a relatively brief period of time. But I mean, this will have consequences for healthcare providers, for transportation, construction contracts, for all the contracts that the state has, and the consequences of this are vast and enormous.
What are the consequences for higher ed and K-12?
Well, the reason I'm doing this is because difficult as this would be, a shutdown, it still pales in comparison with the devastating effect of the Republican budget on critical areas like education, where you would have a 19% cut for the University of Minnesota and a 14% cut for Minnesota. The university has already said that would result in a 12.5% increase in tuition next fall. So we put education further out of the reach of middle-income Minnesota families. And on the health side, 104,000 Minnesotans would stand to lose their health care under their proposal. So, a temporary shutdown, painful as it would be, is not equivalent to the kind of catastrophes that would be ongoing that would occur if I acceded to this budget. And that's just a fundamental principle that I think the people of Minnesota are far better served from my balanced, fair, reasonable approach than they are from an all-cuts budget. And the intransigence of those who say, they won't negotiate, they'll negotiate, but they won't agree to anything, that is a reasonable compromise.
Better served by a shutdown than the Republican budget?
I think the people of Minnesota are served, not by a continuous shutdown, but I think they're better served by a temporary one for hopefully a very limited period of time than they would be over the next 2 years by the kind of, catastrophic cuts in so many areas, public transit, virtually eliminated state funding, and so many of the areas that affect senior citizens, home health care that keeps people in their homes. The list goes on and on and on. Special education and cuts there for, kids that have special needs. So, I can't, as a matter of principle, sign a budget that would consign Minnesota to that future. And I'm certain that's not the future that Minnesotans want.
To that point, Governor, some Republican lawmakers have been suggesting today and recently that you want to shut down, that you think it will help you politically or at least hurt them politically. Well, how do you respond to that?
I think that's first, it's totally untrue. I've told them consistently that, we're all in this together, and, we'll either make each other look good or we'll make each other look bad, and a shutdown would make each other look extremely bad.
In your response, sir, you cite that you share the power of the purse, and you cite Johnson v. Carlson by virtue of being able to either sign or veto a bill. But after you veto those appropriations bills, don't you give up power of the purse?
In the sense that I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not probably qualified to give you a legal answer, but in the sense that then the legislature has the prerogative to override my veto with a 2/3 vote in each house. To that extent, they then, the power does ultimately reside with them. If that answers your question.
Governor, the things that could shut down July 1st, what bothers you most?
Oh, I'm not going to get into saying, that, as I said, this is not about my personal preferences or my policy priorities. This is about, very, very hard and painful and difficult decisions based on what we believe the Constitution, dictates. And, it's not about, there's so many other areas that are so vitally important that would be affected.
What do you think the chances are that a judge would order a mediator to be involved, and do you still think that's the answer?
I don't know what the odds are. That's for the court to decide. I think it would be helpful because we haven't been making very much progress on our own, and that's what mediators do. They come in when two sides are at an impasse, and they use their expertise. And the two that the petition cited, former Supreme Court Chief Justice Kathleen Blatz and former Justice James Gilbert. Eminent Minnesotans who would be willing to undertake that assignment and would bring that kind of expertise and hopefully help us find a solution here.
Governor, will you reach a point here where the impact on average people, needing driver's licenses, state park permits, things like that, outweigh for you the impact on families with children with disabilities or seniors in nursing homes or people who aren't necessarily in the mainstream, poor people who need health care? At some point, will you just have to say the pressure is too much from the average, people out there?
Well, it's a Hobson's choice. They're two very, very bad options. But the worst of them, to me, is to agree to an all-cuts budget that would decimate the University of Minnesota, reduce its funding to below what it was in 1999, would devastate MnSCU, would force college tuitions higher, would cost 104,000 Minnesotans their health care, cost senior citizens their stay-at-home health care, and and on and on. And those would be going on for the next 2 years and would then be continuing as part of that reduced base. So some things are worth standing up and fighting for, and this is a matter of both principle and also what my convictions are is what's best for Minnesota. And to do that, asking the wealthiest 2% of Minnesotans to have their taxes raised, and really you should be asking the Republicans, why is it that all the catastrophe of a shutdown, or the even worse catastrophe of all these cuts and effects on people, which have been documented over the last couple months, why is it that none of that is important as protecting the richest 2% of the people of Minnesota from paying more in income taxes. And the other 98% are all going to be, affected one way or another by either of the two alternatives. And it's still incomprehensible to me that anybody could think that, that's a higher priority. Protect the wealthiest 2% from paying $1 more in taxes.
Governor, Republicans have been critical today of your meeting yesterday with the Vikings about a stadium issue while all of this is left unresolved. What's your response to that?
I responded in writing to the leaders on Monday. And we, at the staff level, set up meetings for Tuesday and for Wednesday in these issue areas. It's going to be transportation and state governments first, and then I don't remember what it was next. They weren't resolved in how they wanted to proceed, so they asked that those meetings be postponed, and first time they were available to meet with me was this afternoon. So I've been here all week and available and ready to go and was planning on that.
Why are you worried about the Viking Stadium when the budget is still unresolved?
Because there was nobody around here they weren't here to interact with, to negotiate with, to discuss with. It was their request. We agreed at the staff level Tuesday morning based on their request to meet this way, and my response in writing, yes, I accept that. And Tuesday morning, the staffs had worked out a schedule starting on Wednesday, and then Thursday, and then Friday, and then the two leaders said that they didn't want to proceed until we met to discuss these other issues that they felt were necessary, and so that meeting was set up at their request for this afternoon at 3 o'clock. So I've been around all week and available all week to negotiate on the budget, and I'm not responsible for the fact that we haven't met substantively. Meanwhile, I've been working with two Republican legislators, Senator Rosen and Representative Lanning, on the Vikings legislation, and they inform me that they, are in consultation with their leadership. So it seems to me that there's a tacit recognition, if not approval by the leadership, that this is something that's desirable to continue forward. If the legislative leaders want to, say that the Vikings legislation is a distraction or somehow interfering, I don't see that. With the other deliberations, they can just say it won't be on the agenda for a special session and take care of it that way.
Governor, what do you view as in terms of the size of your total budget? Republicans are saying, they're not sure where this number is at. From your perspective, including fees and surcharges, what is the size of your total budget?
$37.6 billion.
Haven't you said in the past 35.8 billion is the number?
That's dropping it down from 37.6 to 35.8. That's dropping it down 1.8 billion. The last detailed budget I submitted, which was after the second February revenue forecast, was a 37.6 billion, and then I offered, that's where I am at 37.6, and they're at 34, and the difference is 3.6, and I offered to split the difference of 1.8. So I've come down 1.8 in principle without specifying as yet where that would come, and that's the process that now at their request will be engaged in the next several days.
Do you expect them to issue a spending list of what your $35.8 billion budget would look like on the spending side as well as on the revenue side? Proposals to us?
Well, everything we discuss will be known to everybody. I've learned that lesson around here. So, whatever gets transmitted back and forth will certainly, quickly come to light.
Last question.
I think the reason Lori asked that question is that the Republicans continue to say that you have abandoned your responsibility to set spending priorities, like you've run away from that. Back today at 3:30 they said that.
What I said for about the last 6 weeks consistently is that I wanted them to agree to a target number, a midpoint number. And for the last 2 weeks, I've been asking them, since they disagree with mine, what is their midpoint? And I said I wouldn't get into, disclose my details of a budget spending reductions until they answered that simple question. And Friday, Speaker Zellers and Senator Koch asked that in a very eloquent and impassioned way by Senator Koch that we, proceed this way as they're proposing. And so I made what, was a concession on my part. I said, all right, I'll drop that requirement that you give me a number first. We're going to stalemate, so I'll act this way, exceed your desire to take this approach in order to hopefully initiate some progress. And so that's what I've done. But, I told them all along I wasn't going to give them the details of my spending cuts until they gave me the details of their revenue and hopefully tax increases. Thank you very much.
Do you still think a compromise is possible in the next 2 weeks?
Sure. Anything's possible. Where there's a will, there's a way. Thanks.